We are live.
The meeting of the Committee of the Whole Planning and Administration is now called to order. I would ask you to rise as you are able for the reading of the invocation. As we come together today, we recognize the great responsibilities laid upon us. Our council will always strive to understand the needs of the people we serve and to use power wisely and well. Our purpose is to establish and maintain a city of prosperity and righteousness where freedom prevails and where justice rules. Let us not forget those who served our community and who are no longer with us so that we can continue to do the work we must in their memory. Please be seated. Mr. Clerk, has the roll been taken?
Through the chair, roll call has been taken.
Members of the committee, are there any declarations of pecuniary interest in the items appearing on the agenda? Seeing none. Members of the committee, are there any items for consideration or consent you would like to separate for discussion purposes? Councilor Carpenter?
Yeah, 7.1.6, please.
That is separated automatically as we have a delegation here this evening. Councilor Sakoli?
I don't know if I could raise my hand any higher there, Mr. Chair. I'm feeling chatty tonight, so I'm going to separate 7.12, 7.14, 7.16 is already out, and 7.17.
Mayor Davis?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On the consent agenda, 7.2.1.
Councilor McCreary?
The rest. Get it, 7.1.5.
I'm agreeing with you on the first comment, sir. So please note that 7.16 committee review task force will be automatically separated as there is a registered delegate. Councilor Carpenter, can you move the motion to approve all items for consideration consent 7.1, 7.2 not separated for discussion purposes?
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Sless, that items for consideration from 7.1, 7.2, not separated for discussion purposes be approved.
Mr. Clerk, can you please read the title of all the items that are subject to the vote and then proceed with the vote?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the items subject to the vote are the following: 711 Ontario 55 Plus Summer Games Final Report, 713 Grand Bridge Corporation Report, 722 2023 Year-End Report on Building Permit Fees, and 723 Minutes.
You take the vote.
The motion carries on a recorded vote of 10-0. Those voting in favor: Councilors Vanderborg, Samuel, Carpenter, McCreary, Martin, Salas, Caputo, Sullivan, Sakoli, and Mayor Davis.
So there are no statutory public hearings this evening on the agenda, but we do have a delegation. We have one group registered as a delegation for tonight's meeting. Before hearing the delegation, I would like to remind those in the meeting today that the following rules of decorum as set forth by the city's procedure bylaw apply. No person shall display any sign, banner, or place card in the meeting room other than materials that, in the opinion of the chair, are legitimate audio-visual aids necessary in connection with any presentation to be made to council. All persons present shall use polite and respectful language and shall refrain from the use of any language or making of any gesture that is disrespectful or offensive. All persons addressing council shall speak only on the subject in debate and shall not speak on any other subject. No person shall applaud participants in debate or engage in conversation or behavior that may disrupt the proceedings of the meeting. I will now ask David Kilstra, Lee Lawrence, and Andy Strassville from the Environmental Sustainability Policy Advisory Committee to please come forward to speak to item 7.1.6, Committee Review Task Force Report 2024-03-21. You will have 10 minutes to present, inclusive to questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't know if my video is started yet, but I will try that right now. There we go. I think you can see me now. My name is David Kielstra, and I'm the chair of the SPAC group in Brantford. I am also joined today by Andy Strathfield and Lee Lawrence, who are in person this evening. SPAC stands for the Environmental and Sustainability Policy Advisory Committee, which is a council-mandated committee made up of citizen volunteers. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today in reference to the council's recent motion put forward to disband this committee. In discussion, councilors asked what was the role of SPAC, whether the group used its budget, and the suggestion that we're not meeting quorum. These issues mischaracterize the purpose of SPAC and also some of the facts of the committee, which I will get to. At the March committee review meeting to consider the findings of the committee status report, SPAC was not listed as one of the committees with issues. There was no mandate changes mentioned, no quorum issues, and no other factors that make the group unsustainable. Instead, a motion was put forward at that meeting to disband the committee. Addressing your points one at a time. What is our mandate? Historically, the group provided input on a range of environmental issues. However, the mandate was updated in 2023 by council to refocus the committee on corporate emissions and implementation of Brantford's climate plan. The committee at that time was also reduced to bi-monthly meetings. What about the question of quorum? Despite what was stated at the most recent meeting, SPAC has been well attended since switching to bi-monthly meetings last year without difficulty meeting quorum. Occasionally, we've had meetings canceled at the request of staff to be cognizant of city staff resources. What about the provided budget and not being used? The SPAC budget has actually been used in full each year since I have been a member of the committee since 2020. It has been applied to communications initiatives such as the Brantford Energy Plan and a series of videos to promote ways citizens can take personal actions against climate change, which I did actually discuss in detail with a council member. It has also been used to provide trees to residents, contributing to the canopy and lowering the energy costs of residents due to shade. Another question was asked, why are the reports arriving as accepted information or just for information? Each meeting, the group has reviewed the reports given to us and provided comments back to staff to improve the report going to council or to make recommendations of other areas where environmental policies and changes can be taken. Some examples of this. SPAC was a leading proponent of initiating the Green Bin program, and we worked with staff on ways to implement the communications rollout and how to measure success. SPAC also had an important role in reviewing the Climate Lens tool, which was brought to us, and we discussed it as a group about ways to implement. SPAC relaunched the Green Awards in 2023 as well, after a multi-year hiatus due to COVID. I also want to highlight an example of our oversight role, which I think is very important to this group. At our November 2023 committee meeting, we received a report on the status of Brantford's corporate emissions. In truth, Brantford is not meeting its targets. In fact, corporate emissions have been going up overall since 2018. SPAC served in its role and provided by council and questioned the report. The report asked for more information about the two largest corporate emitters to report back to SPAC about ways to reduce emissions. And we were able to collaborate with staff at our next available meeting to discuss the landfill and fleet transit optimization strategies, which are underway, an issue that has captured a lot of attention from locals. Unfortunately, there was an undertone at the recent council discussions questioning the committee's expertise and credibility. This is frustrating to a group of volunteers, and I stress volunteers, who have given up their free time to try to make this community a better place. There actually is a commendable variety of educational backgrounds within this group, which was selected by council based on their expertise and experience. Our group does have a wealth of experience in communications, environmental planning, business development, brownfields, and policy writing, but most importantly, lived experience in this community. Now, what about the optics of disbanding a citizen-led environmental committee? One counselor aptly pointed out at the concerning optics of this decision in the midst of a climate emergency. There is a reason that most Ontario municipalities of a similar size have an equivalent citizen-led group. Climate change disproportionately affects equity-seeking populations, groups of people that are not well represented in government or on this council. The Association of Municipalities of Ontario highlights the importance of having an equity lens to climate planning, which takes these existing disparities into account and makes sure policies are there to reduce and not exacerbate them. We were decades behind other communities when it came to something as simple as green bins. Do not be on the wrong side of history with this decision. I should also add that while we are on the subject of optics, this decision to disband the committee came on very abruptly as we were completing this oversight role, without membership of the committee present. The rationale expressed in the most recent council meeting were unfounded, but perhaps uncoincidentally after SPAC raised concerns about Brantford not meeting its corporate emissions target right now. Council raised the question of what is there left to do. We know Brantford Council cares about making the city a more livable place for residents and also attractive to investors. Here are some of the items that were on our radar for next meeting agendas. Lending support to preserving the Apps Mills Nature Center and other conservation initiatives. Also, promoting enhancement of the local tree canopy. Mitigating invasive species on city lands. Landfill capacity considerations. And climate adaptation strategies, especially including flood-prone areas. Speaking of which, there are a lot of major developments coming to the city, including a new arena, also in a very flood-prone area, and hopefully a new hospital that we'll be on the hook for as a city to help fund. It will be absolutely necessary to build them with energy efficiency and climate resilience in mind, with input from our growing and changing population. As I wrap up my time, I would be remiss not to suggest alternatives to committee disbandment. Your biggest concerns were allocation of city resources in the form of budget and personnel. This committee is ready to work with council on this. If there are concerns about the committee's performance or use of staff time, please clarify or provide opportunities to make improvements, such as through training. We were not given this opportunity on this matter. Reassessing meeting frequency or budget changes could also be explored. SPAC is serving a critical oversight role that cannot possibly be filled by government-led department or a single climate change officer alone. Yes, Brantford is taking steps to address some climate change issues and implementing the climate lens for committee decision-making. These are great. It now has a climate plan, but our fleet of green Zambonis is not enough. Climate affects everyone. This crisis is unfathomable. Our city's most vulnerable need a voice, and removing this group at a time when Brantford's climate goals are not being met is more likely to result in further declines. Addressing these trends now early through dialogue is the only path forward. Thank you very much for your time. Andy or Lee may also have a few words. Thank you.
Thank you, David. You have 15 seconds.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Time's up then.
Thank you for that. So since there was presentation tonight, we will be dealing with this shortly. Okay. So there are no presentations on tonight's agenda. The committee will now consider the items that were separated for discussion purposes. Councillor Hunt, can you please read the motion to place all separated items for consideration not previously voted on the floor and state your seconder, please? Councillor Carpenter, can you please read the motion and state your seconder?
I don't have the motion for me. There we go. Moved by myself, seconded by Counselor Sless again, that all items for consideration for consent, item 7.172, separated for discussion purposes, be approved. So they're on the floor.
Clerk, can you take the vote? All right, so here we go. Councillor Sicoli, you separated, oh, well, we're gonna deal with seven, the one that's on in front of us, 7.1.6. Which is the Community Review Task Force. Councillor Sullivan?
Thank you, Chair. I actually have an amendment to bring forth for this one. Is this appropriate now, or would you rather let people speak to it first?
I'd like you to bring the amendment now if you can. That'd be
Okay.
great.
Just waiting for it to come up. All right, moved by myself, seconded by the mayor, that clause G be struck off and that the Environmental Sustainability Policy Advisory Committee be added to clauses B, 2, and 3. And speaking to that, the mandate for the SPAC has actually broadened. So I think we need to revisit this and bring it back to what it's supposed to be. And I think this will allow us to actually get this one back on track.
Any discussion on the amendment? Okay, take the vote.
The amendment carries on a recorded vote of 10-0. Those councillors voting in favor, Councillors Benkelberg, Samuel, Carpenter, McCurry, Martin, Salas, Caputo, Sullivan, Sicoli, and Mayor Davis.
Any further discussion? Councillor McCreary?
Chair, thank you very much. I was pleased to be the lead on this, and with Councillor Sullivan's able assistance and that of clerk staff, we interviewed the chairs of all committees. Staff interviewed staff liaisons to all committees. It was a significant volume of work. It's something we haven't done since the days of Mayor Friel, if my recollection is correct. And you can see the results of this in terms of a number of directions we're pondering tonight, and I hope everybody will unanimously support. So there are things such as, further staff training. Chairs quite often don't have the training they need to lead the groups, and therefore their effectiveness suffers as a result. Not the fault of the chairs, but simply the result of our inability to support beyond a basic mandate. Some of them have lost track with respect to mandate, and we're going to get back on track. Some of them have third-party organizations that may or may not be interested in participating anymore, and perhaps we need to reconsider how we populate those committees. We're thinking of consolidating the appeals committee to just have one body to review appeals. We're looking at some changes to the appointments policy. For instance, we look at the disparity in terms of the number of individuals who may apply to regular postings for volunteers compared to what we just experienced with respect to our advertisement for the Municipal Service Corporation to manage the room tax, where we had 31 applicants, all of whom were interested in serving on just one committee. That's something for us to consider, as well as how we advertise. We also want to have a look at the onerous nature of onboarding for our volunteers. It really asks a lot more of people than we should, and we're hoping to streamline that. We also have some cases where chairs really don't want to be chairs, and the way we serve now, members of council, a decision we made a long time ago, may not serve as chairs or vice chairs. There may be some circumstances where we want to change that. We're going to disband the Southwest Task Force unless an amendment comes forward. and we're going to disband Division 0 Road Safety Committee unless an amendment for that comes forward. In closing, I want to thank all the members of the committee and especially clerk staff who did yeoman service in terms of arranging all this. I hope committee will support the rest of what's before us tonight unanimously.
Counselor Carpenter?
Yes, to staff, the Vision Zero Road Safety Committee, where would that volume of work go? And how would council members get the information forward about road safety issues within their wards and make sure it's addressed? I take it this is a recommendation of staff. There's a reason for this recommendation to disband this committee, so hoping there's some logic for this.
Jennifer, you want to answer that, or are you prepared to answer that? Okay.
Oh, through chair, it's Mark Jacklin. My video will not go on. But I did just want to talk a little bit about the Vision Zero Road Safety Committee. So, start my video now. Councilors will still be able to go through staff for any neighborhood issues, and we'll deal with those through the neighborhood safety reviews. Any other reports that would have typically gone through the Vision Zero Committee, well, I'll just go straight to the Committee of the Whole, Operations Administration.
So so there was funding that also went to the Vision Zero Committee. I believe it was red light camera funding. There was other funding that went through to fund Vision Zero initiatives. Where will that funding go now? Will it go into the engineering pot?
Through the chair, that money would still go through Vision Zero initiatives. We do have a Vision Zero master plan, and that's where that money would go through. Just any reports that we do need permission on would still go through the Committee of the Whole.
Yeah, okay. So just speaking to this, I got some concerns with us limiting this committee. I mean, I spent almost 5 years just getting a speed bump on one street in my ward. And the only way we got that was kept bringing it forward. Finally, it landed on Vision Zero. We got some of this stuff done. I'm just concerned about Vision Zero was pretty open and broad. The discussion was public. The meetings were recorded. Work within the wards. Every member of council was represented on that committee. I'm just afraid if it disappears, we'll find some wards will be getting representation and others won't. And that's how I feel now for Ward 4, and I'm concerned about that. So when the time comes, I'd like to move it into that review category, as Councillor McCreary has suggested. There might be an amendment for that.
Counselor Scully?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and hats off to the two councillor colleagues that put a lot of work into this, Councillor McCreary and I believe Councillor Sullivan put a lot of work into this, and a very detailed recommendation came forward. I know that it couldn't have been easy to go through this exercise. I was part of the multi-use trails and bikeways committee way back when, and it was my very first City of Brantford committee alongside actually former councillor Rick Weaver. And we were both very passionate about the trails, and it was, in my opinion, the best committee ever. And I recall how upset I was when that was disbanded by the council of the time. However, since then, I do have many, many years, and I've got dozens and dozens of committees under my belt. And through that experience, I'm of the opinion that when a committee exists past the point of having a very clear and quantifiable objective and mandate, that it actually has an adverse effect on our volunteerism. You know, it quite often leads to volunteers feeling unhelpful. That's where we start to get quorum issues. So, you know, I will be supporting all of the recommendations. I was happy to see the amendment brought forward by Councillor Sullivan, because I'm not totally sold that the SBAC committee has achieved its mandate, or that there's not any more work for them to do, but I'm also unsure of that. So I'm happy that we're going to be reviewing that further in collaboration with the committee. So I'm in support of all of the recommendations here, and I look forward to seeing what comes back through the review. Thanks.
Mayor Davis?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to certainly thank staff. Staff did a lot of work on particularly city clerk staff, but also credit to the chair and the vice chair, Councillor McCreary and Councillor Sullivan. They did a lot of work through the fall and the summer, meeting with each of the committee chairs and committee members, getting input. I thought they did a very thorough job, and I commend them for it. The goal is to not only just streamline our process, but also make sure that we're allocating our time, citizens' time, and staff time in a way that's most efficient and most effective. And for example, questions raised about the Vision Road Safety Committee. That committee was intended to be a catalyst to improve road safety. Back 5 years ago, it was necessary that there be a subcommittee or a task force to really focus the attention resources of the city on these particular issues. It's now been, because of the work of the committee, that's now occurring on a almost like daily part of the city's business, and a concern about traffic safety. For example, when it comes to traffic calming was not really readily accepted or part of the budgeting process in the city 5-6 years ago. It now is. Councillors are doing a stand-up job and going through their wards, having neighborhood meetings, looking at traffic calming issues. There was also a real push on to bring in red light cameras, and that, of course, is now in the process of being done. We have some already, and we'll expand that. And then also the automated speed control cameras, which we have based on the work of the Vision Zero Road Safety Committee. We've incorporated that into our budget for this year and next year to establish that. And to me, it makes sense now that the original intent behind the Vision Zero Road Safety Committee has been accomplished, in the sense that that's being incorporated in the city's day-to-day business. And in fact, I think disbanding the committee so that these issues now come right up to committee of the whole probably will actually increase the public profile of the particular issues, in the sense that public doesn't often follow what's happening in the Vision Zero Road Safety Committee. Not generally reported in the press, but certainly issues that come up to COW certainly are. And so I think this will increase actually the visibility and focus on the actions we're taking to complete the Vision Zero Road Safety process. And I would ask members to support. I think it does make sense, make it more efficient, and probably actually result in better public profile and action to complete the Vision Zero Road Safety vision.
I'd like to chime in on this, if I may. First of all, I'd like to, again, also congratulate the fact that not only was this brought up by councillors and how it was handled, and great job by staff, but to be able to see that there was a need to streamline, to see where we can become more efficient and what we can actually look at, either being redundant or something that we can look at spending more time on. As for the traffic and for the Vision Zero, in the 18 months since I've been on council, I think it's been 18 months. The wind chill factor feels like 30, but I've had a lot of issues with residents who've come forward to Councillor Sluss and I about various spots, and we have handled those. We've had traffic meetings. We've brought traffic out. So I think we can clearly look after our own wards when it comes to that without having something come forward. But one committee that cannot be dismantled is environment. Where we are in our time, our growth, as mentioned by David Kilstrud tonight, everything that's coming forth in the city, I think it's imperative that this stay intact in order for us to be able to get a voice and to be able to get some direction, and working through staff to make sure that our environmental issues are looked after, especially from people who give their time that want to be a part of making sure that our community is looked after. So again, I accommodate staff. Great job. Councillor McCreary, your team, great job. And that's it. Councillor McCreary.
Just one final comment, Mr. Chair, and thank you for doing such a good job tonight. That's an inducement. One of the questions that Michael and I asked of every committee was a two-part question. We asked them, do you feel that you add value to the corporation of the city of Brantford? And I stole that from the CAO, actually. And do you feel that your participation on the committee rather, adds value to your lives personally? And what was encouraging was the responses to those two questions. Almost invariably, the answers were yes to both. And I think during volunteer week, I think it's this week or it was last week. Anyway, we'll say it's volunteer week. It's refreshing to see that it's a two-way street and that the people that provide a service to us that we couldn't possibly afford to pay for also get something out of it. And I think that's representative of the fact that we've got two gentlemen in the audience with us tonight who believed enough in their committee to be here in person, and the chair was online and made a passionate plea to sustain the Environment Committee. So I think that speaks a lot to our community, the people in it, and the way the corporation, the city of Brantford views them. So to volunteers, thank you, and members of council, thank you for the kind words for Michael and I, and we look forward to your support.
Councillor Samuel.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. I was also pleased to see that amendment come forward tonight and to see the SPAC be able to continue their very important work. And I do also have reservations about Zero Vision being disbanded. So I'm looking forward to seeing Councillor Carpenter's resolution or his amendment if that comes forward. Thank you.
Councillor Carpenter.
I'd like to move an amendment to that one if it's accepted, that be reviewed as well in consultation with the other, like the SPAC being reviewed.
Through the chair, we can have the same wording that we had for the other one. Basically to strike off clause I, which talks about Vision Zero, and then include Vision Zero Road Safety Committee for a mandate review and composition review as well.
And speaking to the amendment, did I get a seconder? Okay. I don't suspect this is going to pass, but we'll talk about it anyways. I mean, this is a review. There's 5 members of council on this committee that meet every 3 months. It's not onerous work to get, but it supports staff's direction in getting some things done by knowing that there's 5 members of council that support this. My concern is the thought saying it's not necessary that the ward council can do that. I don't believe all the wards are being treated equally. At least I don't feel like Ward 4 is being treated the same. I'm trying to get things done that seems to be more difficult for Ward 4 for some reason. And I just have concerns that at least if it's on the Vision Zero committee, it's on the agenda. So my residents say, I'd like this street reviewed. I can have it come to Vision Zero, and I know it's been reviewed, and they can see in the agenda that it's been reviewed, and they know that something's actually happening. So that's why I would like to see this reviewed in the mandate, and I don't want to lose it. And if this fails, please separate H, because I won't be supporting, or sorry, H, separate I, because I won't be supporting this complete disbandment of this committee.
Councillor Scully.
Thank you. I think your suspicions are correct. I won't be supporting this amendment strictly on the basis that I can help the residents in Ward 1 faster if I just have an idea and bring it to committee and move it along forward. As it stands now, when I have an idea for traffic calming measures, I have to wait 3 or 6 or 9 months sometimes, depending on where I am in the cycle, to bring it forward to Vision Zero, and then it has to filter through to committee, and then it has to filter through to council. So just on that basis alone, I think we have used Vision Zero. We've squeezed every ounce of its mandate out of it. We all have a flow as far as traffic concerns, traffic calming measures are concerned, and we can just sort of skip that step now and get things done just a little bit faster. I know the residents are not really thrilled with the bureaucratic red tape that they frequently have to jump through, and this was just one extra step. So I'm not going to be supporting this based on that.
Okay, seeing no further questions. Oh, sorry, Councillor Van Tilburg.
The value of Vision Zero over the years has been eye-opening. Councillor Weaver was one to bring that forward, also from Ward 1. And a lot of the tools that are in the Vision Zero and that what the city does today didn't happen 5-6 years ago. These were changes, and there were things that had to be accepted, and there had to be budgeting put forth. I'm also of the opinion that all the aspects of what Vision Zero could bring in creating a safer road environment from policy positions has been done. What I don't believe is that somehow a counselor can automatically be the be all and end all of road safety. That's just a fallacy. We can give our inputs, but often sometimes those inputs are political. Often those inputs are rushed and they do not take into account all of the citizens in the street or area or corridor. Our staff does do that. And so while I don't believe that Vision Zero actually held up anything, in fact, it moved forward many things, or we wouldn't have those very things today. The process that's before us should have that aspect where our professional staff have time to go over everything, and that the residents in the areas in the streets have time to see everything. Often these changes to our roads happen in the blink of an eye, and sometimes within one council meeting, and it's done and over with. So I don't know, I'm not being a traffic engineer, having any background whatsoever, but I do know that I could make some people happy or off my back. I don't think that's actually wise in all cases. So I don't think that we're actually delaying things by allowing staff to go over. In fact, I would like to see something, if the Vision Zero is brought down, where our staff has to have the opportunity to sign off and look at changes councillors want to make on behalf of the residents. And then we can value that. We can make that decision. Because often we're not doing that now. I find it's very disrespectful for those who are professionals who they went to universities for this and colleges for this. And I certainly didn't. I'm a steel worker. So I want the experience to be where the experience is. I do know that we have meetings at our ward done through our traffic department, and I'm looking forward to those. And that's where I want to see things get done. I do not want to see this where we get rid of Vision Zero, and by the way, all of a sudden we're running around like heroes and maybe making broader mistakes in our road network. And that's always a possibility. So thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak on it.
Seeing no further questions, would like to take a vote on the amendment.
The amendment fails on a recorded vote of 2-8. Those councillors voting in favor, Councillor Samuel and Carpenter. Those councillors voting against, Councillors Ventelborg, McCreary, Martin, Celeste, Caputo, Sullivan, Sicoli, and Mayor Davis.
Okay, I'd like to call a vote on the motion as amended.
I has been separated, please.
So this is the motion to vote on all clauses except clause I. My apologies. The vote is to vote on clause I only. Sorry. As amended, yes. Oh, an amendment.
It's not amended.
I'm waiting for Councillors Ventelborg vote.
Could you clarify exactly what I'm voting on? I'm a bit
Yes,
puzzled. What I see is recorded vote on clause I as amended. Was it amended? What clause?
No,
is
it was
this?
not amended. It was not amended, Councillor Ventelborg. You're correct. It's only clause A as it was originally presented on the agenda and in the committee report.
So what am I voting on here? I'm not, my screen shows something different. So what am I voting on?
Correct. It is just the wording that is incorrect. What you're voting on is on recorded vote on clause A, period. So not has amended because the amendment failed. Sorry, I, clause I.
I voted anyways. We'll see what happens.
The motion I carries on a recorded vote of 7-3.
Okay, now that I know what
Yeah.
I voted on, I'd like to have my vote put to where I would like it to be, which is a no.
Sorry, Councillor Ventelberg, that the vote was for clause I only.
Yeah. Then I would like that as a no.
Okay. So Councillor Celeste, would be like to change the vote to yes, is that correct?
Yeah, I was voting on not what I thought I was voting on, so yes,
Okay, sorry about that.
but I might have voted on what I could have voted on, but I didn't.
Okay, so
So my answer is maybe.
yeah, so the clause I carries on carries, those councillors voting in favor. Councillor McCurry, Councillor Martin, Councillor Celeste, Caputo, Sullivan, Secoli, Mayor Davis, those councillors voting against, Councillors Ventelborg, Semmel, and Carpenter.
Now I'd like to call a vote on the motion as amended with the exception of clause I.
So the motion on the recorded vote has amended except clause I, carries on a recorded vote of 9-1. Those councillors voting in favor, Councillors Ventelborg, Samuel, McCurry, Martin, Celeste, Caputo, Sullivan, Secoli, Mayor Davis. Those councillors voting against, Councillor Carpenter.
Okay, we'll move on to 7-1-2, and you separated that, Councillor Secoli.
That I did. I was happy to see us as a city continuing to show our support for the Canadian Military Heritage Museum through this long-term discounted lease. Last year, the museum hosted a whole bunch of us counselors, and it was a really cool tour that we had there. And I really just separated this to use this as a platform to encourage everybody who is watching to go pay a visit to the Canadian Military Heritage Museum. As an adult, I went in there and I was amused and entertained and humbled at the same time. I was thrilled to see that they have a whole section dedicated to women and honoring their contribution in the military. So to any parents who are watching, if you're bored on a rainy Saturday, pack your kids up and head out. If you're an adult and you've never been in there, do take the opportunity to go through now. Thanks. That's all.
Not seeing any further questions. Oh, Councillor McCreary?
Chair, thank you very much. The museum is a repository of our local history dating back to the War of 1812 and coming to the present. They also have an extensive library and a collection of archives. And it's a first-rate facility. It's been said that it's second only to the Canadian War Museum in Ottawa. And as Councillor Secoli said, if you've never been there, you should go. And if you've been there, you should go back. And this is a model of what can happen in our community. And I can only hope that the day will come, and we've had discussions with them already, when we may be able to put the Brant Museum and Archives in a similar city-owned facility so that they can tell their story, our story, as these folks at the Canadian Military Museum do, and not have to be burdened with bricks and mortar that are not sustainable. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Van Tilburg.
So museum's 347 Greenwich in wonderful Ward 5. And probably one of the real big gut checks for me is seeing some of the rifles I fired off. They're now museum pieces. So I'm wondering if I'm now a museum piece. That goes for some of the guns I fired too.
Councillor Martin?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've had the pleasure of not only seeing the museum, but also seeing their storage room. And they have a very large number of artifacts in storage that they rotate through the museum. So even if you've been there, you haven't seen it all. And as Councilor McCreary said, been there before, it's time to go back because some of the things have been changed out. They've got different artifacts on exhibit. And there'd be something there that wasn't out last time you were there. So certainly, if you get a chance, head on back and take your family with you. It's a wonderful museum that does our city proud by, as Councilor McCreary said, being second only to the National War Museum in Ottawa.
Okay, not seeing any further questions. We'll call the question. Oh, Councillor Carpenter.
Sorry about that, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I've been a supporter of the Military Museum for many, many years, been there many, many times. But I'd like us to find a way to marry the museum with the digital museum, which is the Great War Centenary website that lists all the veterans from World War I that served in Brantford, Brant County, and has all their documentation. If we could find a way to save that archive as part of our museum, I would like us to see a way clear to do that. Thank you.
Councillor McCreary.
Councilor Carpenter has a splendid memory. And that reminds me that we did have a discussion between those folks and municipal staff quite some time ago. And I wonder if staff could provide us with a memo when this comes to council about the success we've had in terms of bringing that repository of knowledge into the city's web-based information center, please.
Not seeing any further questions. We'll call the question to vote.
Item 712 carries on a recorded vote of 10-0. Those councillors voting in favor, Councillors Ventilbor, Samuel, Carpenter, McCurry, Martin, Salas, Caputo, Sullivan, Secoli, and Mayor Davis.
Okay, 7.1.4, Councillor Secoli, you separated this.
This is the dog, animal licensing. Okay, so compliance, this is a quote from this report. Compliance with dog licensing is low due to the inconvenience of the process. And as a dog owner, never before have I heard truer words. For those of you that are unfamiliar, if you don't have a pet, you're unfamiliar with the process, allow me to enlighten you. So I just got a puppy last year, so this is very fresh in my head, okay? So first you receive a letter in the mail via snail mail, which in itself is archaic and costly and inefficient, to which I read the letter and I throw it away because that's what I do with mail, thinking that I'll remember to do it. Then a few weeks go by and I think, oh shoot, I gotta register my dog. I gotta do this license. And I think to myself, this is 2024. I can probably go online and do this, right? So I go on the City of Brantford website and I'm able to navigate quite quickly to the online form. And I go on there and I fill out the form and then it generates an error code because I don't know my friggin' client ID number because I threw it away when the mail came a few weeks ago. So then I see that there's an email address. If you email dogs@brantford.ca, you can ask them for your client ID number so that you may go back online and fill out the form. So I do so. And then I wait for that response. If it doesn't go to your junk mail, it just gets buried in your inbox under the hundreds and hundreds of other emails that have come in since. Next thing you know, months have gone by and you realize you still haven't registered your dog. And then you're thinking to yourself, value for my buck because the license expires every December 31st. You're thinking to yourself, maybe I'm going to get next year. Maybe I'll get it next year because why would I pay full price when it expires every December 31st? So for the same reason that you're probably not going to sign up for the gym in December, you're probably not going to be applying for this dog license in the middle of the year. And so I can understand and be empathetic to the residents of Brantford who maybe would wait for the dog licensing process. And this is not, I'm being a little bit funny here and bringing some humor to the discussion because I'm really happy to see us modernizing this process. I know city staff have much better things to do than licking envelopes and sticking on stamps and sending out this letter. And I'm a true believer that a wise person knows one thing is for sure. It's that they know nothing and they surround themselves with the experts. So this is an example of that. This is an example of us delegating something to DocuPet is the company. And they're truly the experts. They're going to be able to bring forward the dog licensing program at no cost to us. We're going to be allowed to sort of go year to year based on when you get the dog, not necessarily a fiscal year. So I am really happy to see this. Whoever came up with this idea, found this company, did the work in the back end, hats off to you as someone, a new dog owner who just went through this process. I see Dave laughing over there. Thank you so much. And full support from me, and happy to see that cats are being regulated too now, because I think that's needed. Thank you.
Councillor Sluss.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree a lot with what was just said, but when I read the report, the price is going up significantly to register a dog. I know it keeps saying in there that it's cheaper. I read that it's $45 for a 365-day period for a neutered dog and $75 for a dog that hasn't been neutered. I pay $15 a year for a neutered dog now. So if I look at this, that's a senior price for a neutered dog. So that's $30 more. That's triple what I pay now. So I'm not sure where I get the refund of $30 plus the savings that are insinuated in this report. Could someone explain that to me, please?
Through the chair, Councilor Sluss, you should be getting a owner over the age of 65 rate, which is $25, not 15. And with this program, we can't make deals with private companies, but DocuPet has. So as a senior dog owner, having a altered dog, it's a $25 license. However, you will get a gift card for a national retail store to help you for $25. So you won't pay anything for your dog license.
I'm liking it a lot now. Keep talking. What about Christmas presents? No.
Well, and if you want to buy that special tag for your dog, a bulldog tag, a maple leaf tag, a tie cat tag, you can buy that. And that's where DocuPet makes their money, on those swag tags. And a percentage of that will go into our account that eventually will have enough money to help vaccinate rabies vaccinations for dogs in the city at no cost to the consumer.
I'm really glad you clarified that, Dave, because does it say that in here? Did I miss that?
There was so much information, I couldn't put everything in the report.
Okay,
So-
'cause I was gonna say, I didn't read any of what you just said, and that would have changed my mind completely about what I was reading. Okay, and maybe I misspoke. I thought it was $15, but maybe I'm going back a few years, am I?
Through the chair, I believe you are, but I will go check, make sure you don't owe us $10 every year, so.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Carpenter.
Thank you. I'm really glad you brought in the license is good for 365 days a year. It never made any sense for the license to go from January 1st through to December 31st. That made no sense. You buy a dog, okay, I'm gonna wait till the next year. Why would I pay full price for half a year? And then why would all the work being done all of a sudden in that month? So 365 days spreads the work out over the whole year. That makes a lot of sense. The other question is, we're not gonna be sending the dog police out like we did before, where they knock on your door and if they hear someone bark, they go, oh, there's someone that owes us money. We're not gonna be invading people's privacy in that way, are we?
Through the chair, the DocuPet calls it the comprehensive reminder communication. So they send out emails and letters 45 days before it expires, then 30 days, 14 days, 10 days, 3 days, then it expires. Then they send an email, they phone the person 20 days after expired, and on the 30 days, then we'll send out the dog police.
That's the
to
ones
check.
that decide to buy a license for their dog because they like the dedicated service related to returning the pets and customer support and prove. But what about those that don't want to buy a license for the dog? They don't, what right does the city have to say that you must license your dog? You know, licensing your hamster or your cat?
Well, the rate's through the municipal act, but if a bylaw officer attends for a barking dog complaint, we can check if that person has a license. If they
But
don't,
we're not gonna send, we're not gonna hire students like we did in the past where they went around knocking on doors, looking to see if someone had a dog on that street.
no, I did that 7 years ago and that did not turn out well.
I didn't think so, and I didn't think the community would appreciate someone. So I'm still a little not sure whether dog licensing is a right that we should have. We're not gonna get that money. That money's not gonna be returned to us, is it?
Through the chair. So the money from dog licensing and eventually cat licensing, 'cause if this goes through, it will go towards our animal pound, our dog pound that we're building. And that will help offset the charge. But as well, if we have a dog license on a dog and it gets found, we can return that
Yeah.
dog right away. But
Yeah.
otherwise, as you saw in the report, sometimes they can sit there for 30, 40 days.
We're
And-
not mandating cat license. We're making an option, but we don't have a problem with feral dogs, but we do have a problem with feral cats in our community.
That's
it.
correct.
That's it. I'm just trying to put logic to this and I have not been able to find a lot. Thank you. I understand the logic to the changes for sure from what it was. I wasn't sure it was even the right thing to do in the first place.
Councillor McCreary?
Chairman, thank you very much. Thank you for appearing before us today in your capacity as dog catcher, sir. So looking at the stats from 2 years ago, we don't have the 2023 stats yet. It looks as though we must earn about $90,000 a year from these licenses, give or take.
Through the chair, correct.
And do you know what our cost is to, what the cost side of that revenue number is?
It's currently it was with the licensing for the clerk's office, so it'd just be part of their salary and wages.
Okay, there won't be any savings because it's not a full-time person type of job, right? It's
Through the
It's,
chair, correct.
something every day for a few minutes. So we have a guarantee from this company that our rates will not increase for 5 years.
That is correct. That's the contract that I've read.
Okay, okay. And at the end of 5 years, should we choose not to do this, what's the cost of disembarking, so to speak?
Through the chair.
Disembarking, get it?
I get,
Yeah,
that's
okay,
good.
sorry.
Through the chair. We would be on our own, which would be rough, so.
Cheapness for cheapness.
I won't hound you about it. So Councillor Sless has gotten a deal for 10 years probably. I think though, you know, the downside of this is that probably a lot of people like to come in and pay their dog license at the counter. That's not going to be an option. It's all going to be online from now on, right?
Through the chair, no, they could still come into City Hall customer service and
Yeah.
the person at customer service would just go onto the website and do it all for them.
Okay, okay, okay. So it's from our point of view, it's cost neutral. Let's see. So there's no cost impact to us or to the consumer. For folks who aren't computer literate, they can come in and we'll do it for them. It's not more costly to anybody. So is there a downside then?
Through the chair, Guelph was the very first city to get this company. I was the manager at the time then,
Okay.
and there is no downside. It is just positive. The way dogs go missing and they can put out a geofence and emails and alerts to every dog owner in the city around that area can find these animals. We had more letters of appreciation than negative letters because of this company, and that's
There-
why I support them.
There are about 60 municipalities in Ontario that have this service now and 180 across the country.
Correct.
And let us be absolutely clear for Mr. Ball's benefit that we are not introducing mandatory cat licensing. I hope Councillor Kings is tuning in and we'll read that in the paper because Councillor Kings had a very unfortunate time many years ago when he suggested cat licensing. Thank you.
There's a blessing. Not seen any further. Let's call the question to vote.
Item 714 carries on a recorded vote of 9-1. Those councillors voting in favor, Councillors Ventilbur, Samuel, Carpenter, McCurry, Martin, Celeste, Caputo, Sicoli, and Mayor Davis. Those voting against, Councillor Solomon.
Okay, we have 7.1.5. Councillor McCreary, you had that separated?
I did indeed, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much. And let me just try to find my notes here. Okay, so what I'm seeing here is a request from the Brant County Health Unit to enlarge upon our mandatory inspections for various personal service businesses which are not currently regulated. Jill, I wonder if you could help me out and explain to me why barbers and hairdressers should be under our thumb.
Through the chair to Councillor McCreary, Jill Binkley, Supervisor of Licensing. And I also have with me Philip Podonjev. Philip is the Manager of Infectious Diseases with the Brant County Health Unit. So in short, the city currently licenses a number of personal service settings that do not go beyond a high risk of infection. So right now, what we are looking to do is based on some complaints received by the health unit with respect to maybe lower risk or moderate risk businesses to bring them into the licensing fold in a more coordinated effort. So more places will achieve inspections similar to our higher risk properties.
Thank you. So statistics then with respect to the number of complaints the health unit has received about barbers. Could we speak to that, please?
Through the chair, in 2023, we received 10 complaints related to barbers and nail salons, and 7 of those were regarding unlicensed businesses.
So none of them were health related?
At least one of them was related to an infection where someone developed nail fungus, and the rest were just concerns regarding them not being inspected or licensed.
Okay, so we had one complaint about a nail salon. I presume from your answer that the complaints regarding barbers and hairdressers would have been 0?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you for that.
Not seeing any further questions. Can we call the vote?
Item 715 carries on a recorded vote of 6-3. Those councillors voting in favor, Councillor Samuel, Carpenter, Martin, Caputo, Sullivan, Sicoli. Those councillors voting against, Councillor Ventelberg, McCurry, Celeste, noting Councillor Mayor Davis was out of the room at the time of the vote.
Okay, we have 7.1.7. Councillor Sicoli, you had that separated?
I do. I have a question of staff and I'm not sure who would. I see movement in the back. So my favorite topic of conversation is this non-designated heritage register. And I just want to make sure that I'm understanding it fully, if you wouldn't mind walking me through it. So it looks like the Ontario government has mandated that if we put name or addresses on the list, we have 3 years to either designate them or they come off the list completely as it stands right now. Is that accurate?
Somewhat accurate. I'll clarify. Alan Waterfield, Manager of Long Range Planning, through the chair to the committee. Yes, that was one of the changes to the Ontario Heritage Act brought forward through Bill 23. So when properties are added to the Heritage Register as a non-designated listed property, they're required to be removed 2 years after they're added to the list, unless they've advanced to the step towards designation. And after they're removed from the list, then they can't be added for another 5 years.
Okay, so this resolution here is suggesting that we extend that deadline 5 additional years. So we have till 2030 to designate. or remove them from the list?
Through the chair to the committee, it's not necessarily to designate. All of the properties that were added to heritage registers around the province prior to Bill 23 and its regulations need to be removed after 2 years. So everything that was there as of January 1st, 2023 is going to come off January 1st, 2025. Anything that gets added later then gets off 2 years after that. What this resolution is doing is asking that the province extend that time. So basically, instead of these properties needing to come off after 2 years, they're going to come off after 7 years. So the origin of this resolution stems from a template motion that the Architectural Conservancy of Ontario sent out to municipal heritage committees across the province, asking those committees to adopt a version of this resolution and requesting their council approve it as well.
So we have 555 listed properties on our list here in town,
That's correct.
and this is not enough time for us to investigate all of them?
It's a lot of properties. We're not going to necessarily be designating all of them.
Yeah.
And different municipalities are taking different approaches to how they're dealing with, this impact to their heritage registers. Some municipalities are taking a more robust approach to trying to designate more properties. Our council here, I think, is, more in favor of a carrot as opposed to stick approach towards
Yeah.
heritage designation. So, this council has approved some changes to our heritage grant program, for example, to increase the grants that we provide, again, kind of as an incentive carrot to designation, as well as the work we're going to be undertaking to canvass 5 different neighborhoods about potential heritage conservation districts.
Gotcha. So rarely will I ever support designating a property without the owner's consent or against their will, or without the owner coming forward and asking for that designation. So I'm not of the opinion that we really even need more time. So I don't think we need to send this letter. So I'm not going to be supporting it just out of principle, as I usually do. But thank you so much for explaining that to me.
Not seeing any further questions? Oh, Counselor Samuel.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. I would like to say that this was brought forward by the Heritage Committee. Members around that table feel very strongly that they don't want to lose the hard work that they've already put into listing all of these properties. Staff do need the time to be able to look into these properties, and it gives us the opportunity to look at providing a carrot to these properties instead of just losing all of that hard work. So I definitely will be supporting this tonight, and I hope others will as well. Thank you.
Counselor McCreary.
I will also, and I want to thank Counselor Samwell for her work on this file. I know she had a lot to do with this at committee. I will say this, that, there is value to heritage in our community. And I find it very, very, very distressing that people who stand on principle opposed to the preservation of heritage structures and cultures in our country and our province and our city venture far and wide to enjoy the 1,000-year-old heritage to be found in places like Italy and Spain and Britain. And I find it amusing that that same interest in heritage does not apply to our own backyard, to our own city, to our own province and our own country. This municipality, save for perhaps a 5-year period, going back a couple of settings of council, has had an appalling outlook on heritage preservation in this city, and it's gotten no better. And I would implore people to begin to look at saving the vestiges of the settlement of this city and the hard work that was put into the design and construction of these facilities by people who have gone before us, and to respect them as you do respect the cultures that you go to visit on holidays.
I have a question. Alan, so if if an individual's home is put on the registry and they do not want it on the registry, how do we proceed with that?
Through the chair to the committee, the Ontario Heritage Act allows any property owner whose property is listed to request that it be removed, and then we would bring that request forward to council.
Because we've come with this debate several times, and I agree with Heritage. I'm all for it. I think we have some very unique and wonderful properties and areas in the city that need to be commended for their appearances and how we can keep a city and still keep a culture. But I don't want it to come at the expense of a homeowner. And every time that's come to council, I've always decided to always vote in favor of the homeowner. So I just needed to get that clarity. So, Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You're doing a great job. Through you to Alan. I've had people come up and tell me that they've designated their properties and their property insurance has gone through the roof because they designated it. Is that a factuality or is that just a lot of hearsay from your knowledge?
From the research that I've seen through the chair to the committee, it's by and large hearsay.
Thank you.
Mayor Davis?
I definitely will not be supporting this. I'm very much a believer in preserving and protecting private property rights. And you know, we were sold to some degree a bill of goods in this heritage listing process. Remember we were being told, oh, there's no implication. This is just simply to prepare a list of properties that could potentially be designated.
Chair, I would ask that the mayor withdraw bill of goods from his discussion. It's not a term that's favorable with respect to council and staff that participated in that process.
If I may say, in defense.
Point of order.
I'm not talking about council. I'm not talking about an individual, which is generally what these points of order go to. It's about a policy and how a policy has been promoted across the province, which I think to some degree has been misleading. And I'll explain why. All right. So we were told the way in which the heritage listing program was marketed, I'll call that, let's call it.
Chair, I should have prefaced my comment with point of order. Point of order. I don't believe that that's parliamentary language and it's not conducive to congeniality.
Overruled.
So the way in which the listing program was sold, marketed, promoted, was on the basis that really there was no impact on the property owner other than if they were to try and demolish their apply for a demolition permit, there'd be a period of delay so it could be reviewed. But what I actually saw happening in practice, watching development applications, did you know that if you have a property that's next to a property that's listed, so your property is not listed nor designated, as part of the development process for your property, you're going to have to prepare and produce a heritage assessment. The impact that your development may or may not have on that adjoining property, which has not been designated, only listed. And so there were implications to the listing process that I don't think was fully explained, and in particular, impact on adjoining landowners. And I always looked at the listing process as, to my mind, as I came to understand how the process worked, it was kind of a backdoor designation. And I thought the way in which we responded to the province limiting designate listings to 2 years, I thought was the right thing to do, which is if you really want to protect heritage, and I do, you don't do it through a listing process. You do it through having properties designated. And you do that by convincing property owners that have homes or buildings that have historical merit. You set up a program that provides them with a series of benefits to having their property designated. And we've been doing that at this council. We have a grant program. We're now looking at potentially different tax rates, depending on what the province does with the Municipal Assessment Act. So we're focusing on encouraging property owners to designate and preserve historically significant properties by way, I call it the carrot, rather than the stick. And the stick generally never really works very well. And so what have we done? We've focused on the properties that are on the list, and there's about 550 of them. So we know already which properties have historical significance. We've got a list of about, I think it's about 80, and we're going to focus and are focusing on convincing those 80 landowners that there is benefit to going the designation route. And I think in the end result, after 3, 4, or 5 years, you're going to have more properties designated than expanding a listing process from 2 to 5 years, which still doesn't end up with the property being designated, and instead focusing in a really concentrated and focused way, convincing owners that designating is in their best interest, because we now have the various benefits that come to you if you have your property designated. That's the way to effectively.
Mayor
preserve
Davis, your
heritage.
time is up. Would you like to go back in the queue?
No. Depending on what others may say.
Councillor Van Tilburg.
Who needs a list? Who needs a list to know where all the heritage type buildings are in the city of Brantford? We don't need a list. And the truth is that what really bothers people is we know really nice buildings get bought by developers, get knocked down, and you got a nice apartment building there. And you wonder why they have a heritage impact study when you have a heritage building, and you wonder why the next door might be taken into effect. Well, because sometimes if there is a heritage building there and you're building something beside it that doesn't fit in with the neighborhood, my goodness, you get a whole bunch of people in the neighborhood saying this doesn't fit in. So, you know, I never came into to politics or council or anything under the guise of heritage. I'm probably the last person in the world that would look at a building. Never was big on my my observations. But you know, after 10 years on council, and you see a number of the things that are going on in the city and the community, and I hear these opposite opinions of mine, and they become very swaying, and it's particularly when you're seeing dramatic changes happening within your neighborhoods and within what people identify as very important to them. Now, always we've had members of the community have been very concerned about what heritage is. I mean, if you look at Brant Ave, it was the advocates of people there when they saw apartment buildings and strip malls going up. They thought that this area needed to be set as a heritage street, and that's maintained well. And you see other communities do it. I mean, I go through Dundas, Ancaster, that street, and you wonder, how did they get all the buildings to look like and maintain that heritage look? Oh, I think they had a heritage impact study, and so they made the buildings next to them look like the elegant older structures. So, I mean, you can't just throw the baby out with the bathwater, and I believe that's kind of what this does. And what it also seems to do, if you vote this down, and what going with the province is, you're undermining a lot of people who care about this stuff, who can say, pull out the file and say, hey, we know about this property, we know what it is, it comes to us, and we decide yay or nay, and at least we had a chance. There are too many times where we don't have a chance, we don't get to find out what it is, and it's after the fact that we go, along with the community, say, how could we have let that go? What did we lose there? And we often hear people talk about, oh, we never should have knocked that building down. Do you know what that had meant? Did you, like, that happens. And as the city of Brantford, when you're trying to attract tourism, and I mean, people go to all other cities for exactly what Councillor McCreary stated, to look at the older buildings, you draw on attractions. I don't think you're going to get in this environment in Brantford with a significant developers coming in to buy up property. They're buying up a heritage property because of the land mass that it has and what it can do. It's very rare that they're coming in with the mindset of, I'm buying this heritage property, and it may not be registered heritage, but we all can see it. Building looks like a castle is a castle. And so they can knock it down and they can build up something else and make a lot of money. And I think that we always have to look at what is the value of what we're allowing to happen to our community, one way or the other. And whether that discussion happens through this registry or not is what I think is important. So I'm going to support what's before me. I think the 2 years is a very short time period. And as it said, if somebody wants to say they want off, they can say, I want off. But you know, sometimes they might even learn something about the property they just bought.
Counselor Sluss.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Ellen. Ellen, I'd like clarity on an answer you gave Councilor Caputo. You indicated if somebody was on their property was on the register, on our registry, and they wanted it off, they could come and ask you to have it taken off. And your answer was, well, then we would bring it to council. Can council say yes or no?
Through the chair to the committee, yes, the council can say yes
So
or
if council
no.
says no, then what happens?
And that property owner has an opportunity to appeal to the Ontario.
Sorry, I didn't catch that.
If council says no, then the property owner can appeal.
Appeal to who?
The OLT, Ontario Land Tribunal.
Okay, that's a very expensive process, is it not? Yeah.
Similar
okay.
to any appeal of a land use planning decision.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Carpenter.
I'd like anybody watching tonight or any citizens to think about, drive down Brant Ave and drive past Church Street on Brant Ave, and you'll see a strip mall on the right-hand side of Church and Brant Ave. And look how that, ask yourself, does that fit in with this neighborhood? And is that an improvement to our community? And I can't believe that the answer would be yes. And what came out as a result of that, by that council of the day missing that, it was long before I was on council, but council missing that ended up being that Brant Ave became a heritage district as a result of the people voting for that to be a district, because they were so upset about what happened with that development that doesn't fit in with the neighborhood. Now, owning a heritage property is very expensive. If you're an owner of a heritage property, designated or not, it's very costly. Heat's more, electricity's more, everything, maintenance is a lot costlier. It's very expensive. So there does need to be some incentive, i.e. tax incentive. A lower tax rate if you're maintaining a heritage designated property would make a lot of sense if you want to maintain heritage designation. But the comment, I too am a supporter of private property rights, but to a point. So we can say we support private property rights. We have a planning act that says you can't put that gas station next door to that house or next door to that school because it doesn't fit within the neighborhood and it's not safe for the community. So we have all kinds of rules and regulations that govern what you can do with property on a regular basis. They don't have that in the States. You can drive across to Niagara Falls, New York, and see a gas station right next to a pub, right next to a store, right next to a house, because they've got that free market system where you can put anything anywhere. We've got a different mentality here where we say we want a community to look like a community. We want to protect some things and do others. So so I'm inclined to support this in the sense that I don't want to take anybody's rights away that don't want them, but I don't want us to suggest that we don't tell private property owners what to do with their property. We do it all the time under the Planning Act. That's exactly what the Planning Act is there for. And we got residents now that are coming to us complaining that we're putting a 10-story apartment building in their backyard. And then we got a provincial government that says, well, no fourplexes, 10 stories are okay, fourplexes we're against. And we're seeing this mix all over the province of regulations of what happens in the backyard. So all this is asking for is a few more years to get this on the plan and let people decide whether they want to be in the registry or not. That's the private property owner's right. Thank you.
Okay, going to second time speakers, Councillor McCreary.
I was very pleased to see Councillor Carpenter refocus the discussion to what's actually before us and not the philosophical discussion that we've had, which was sometimes intemperate, I might add. So what's before us today is a question to go to us for a letter to the province to say, give us some more time. We've gone to a lot of effort to put properties on a list, which is no longer valid. Province, you've said to us, we only have 2 years to make decisions, which will then come back to this municipal council to be voted on individually. Or in the case of a district, as a district. So it's asking for 5 more years to allow us to make proper decisions one by one by one. Today, we're not taking away anybody's property rights. Everybody at this table will have an opportunity to do that later or not do it later. You'll have the opportunity to knock down the Red Cross building and allow a nondescript apartment building that will solve some of our housing problems. You have that opportunity later. You'll have the opportunity to knock down the castle on Erie Ave in the beautiful Fifth Ward and put up a nondescript apartment building which meets our housing needs. You have those choices later. All that's being asked of members of council tonight is to ask the Ford government to give consideration to extending that period of time for another 5 years. And then one by one, you can have your philosophical discussion. You can bang your shoe on your desk and say, I stand for property rights. And we'll have that discussion one by one later. But tonight, let's just agree to support the Heritage Committee and get 5 more years of sunshine.
Mayor Davis.
Mr. Chair, there are many things I learned as a young boy from my mother. My mother taught me many things and would often could tell me something that would in a catchphrase would sum up the basic principle, And when I hear the conversation here on this particular issue, I think of one thing my mother would often say to me: 2 wrongs don't make a right. And just because you have 1 wrong, that doesn't excuse other wrongs. But that aside, I think if the goal is, we look at this rationally, if the goal is to increase the number of designated properties that are fully protected, you don't do that through a scattergun grenade approach where you say potentially 500 or 600 properties might have the possibility of being designated, and then you don't really do anything with that to make sure they are designated. We've already worked through this. If you're at the Heritage Committee meetings the last 6 months, they've taken that list of 550, which are the properties that are listed. They brought it down to, I think it's about 60, 70 properties that have the greatest historical significance and potential. And now there's going to be a focused campaign with those owners to try and convince them to designate their properties based on the incentives and benefits that are there for them. That's the way you're going to get properties designated. That's the way you're going to actually protect your heritage, rather than going through a performative process that suggests maybe you're doing something about heritage and you're not really doing anything. So we in this city have a very effective program that I think is far better than just a scattergun listing approach, but we've taken the listings that have been done and have used them and distilled it down to a list of those most significant, and now moving forward to try and see those designated over the next several years. That protects heritage.
Councilor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We were told that being on the list doesn't have any repercussions, but then something came before us and there were repercussions because they were on the list. So you can't have it both ways. Either there are repercussions or there are not. And because there are repercussions just for being on the list, even though we're told there wouldn't be, I won't be supporting what's before us, because if they're not the top 70 as the mayor was talking about, then why are they on the list? So, I mean, if there is something significant that we lose because it's more than 2 years, in 5 years, we can take another look at it. We can bring it back, put it back on the list and try again. But to have a huge list that has ramifications to our community that are negative, I can't support extending the time. Thank you.
Councilor Van Tilburg.
Yes, question to staff. 555, but we've narrowed it down to 70. The 70 last 2 years, and then they're wiped off the list. Is that my understanding?
Through the chair to the committee, where the 70 comes from is those were the first properties that were put onto the Heritage Register, and they were identified to be the highest, best candidate properties for designation. So that's the basis for the 80, and then subsequent phases added the balance.
And one might think, based on what everyone's just referred to on Erie Ave, they call it the castle. That did not make that list, did it?
That is correct.
264 Erie Ave. Okay, thank you.
Counselor Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to reiterate the fact that this is only asking for time. We're not making decisions today or anything like that. We're just asking that a letter be sent to give us time. The comment that was made that if after 2 years it comes off, we could revisit it in 5, well, not necessarily, because in that 5 years, that building could be knocked down. So I think we need to look at this from a practical point of view. Thank you.
Okay, I'll chime in again. I agree, I agree, I agree. I agree, I agree, I agree.
So you're sitting on the fence.
No, I did, as I said earlier, it is our job, and I agree that tonight, the motion in front of us is looking for time. And I still don't believe, it could be 10 years, it could be 1 year, it could be 30 years, it doesn't matter. We need to keep our heritage and our culture of what this city was. In 120 years from now, my house could be declared a heritage. I won't be here to see it, but it could be. But it's our job and our responsibility as counselors on this committee to do what's right. And I've always said, and I'll say it again before, a person can have their residency and or business taken off a registry. And if it has to come to council, we should be respecting that. And then if they don't, then we don't have any issues. We talked about a Red Cross building. Red Cross building hadn't even been declared heritage, and we had to make a choice on that, whether it's coming down or it's not coming down. We had a homeowner here that came in to fight because he already had a property that he had torn down, and he couldn't tear this one down because it came to heritage. And we had an opportunity at that point to stand in the way of someone's retirement plans. That's not our job. Our job is to look after the citizens at every one of their requests. And if they want it to be deemed heritage, God bless them, it's their right. And if they don't, it's not their right either. So, nothing further, let's call the question.
Item 717 carries on a recorded vote of 6-3. Those councillors voting in favor, Vanderboer, Samuel, Carpenter, McCreary, Caputo, Sullivan, and those councillors voting against. Mayor Davis, how would you like to vote? All right, we'll make sure that that is captured in the minutes. And those councillors voting against, Councillor Martin Celeste, Sicoli, and Mayor Davis.
Okay, off to consent items, 7.2.1. Mayor Davis, you had this separated.
You know, thank you, Mr. Chair, and after this talk about our past, I'd like to talk about our present and our future. And what this report tells us. And what this report is it's a review of the economic of 2023. The title is an economic year in review. And so staff have done a great job. They've pulled out information from various sources. For example, the Business Resource Center, the Sanderson Center, the airport, the farmers market, building department, development applications. And what this report tells us is that our community is robust economically. It's a community that's growing, that is continuing to create jobs and prosperity for its citizens, a community that's growing and a property tax base that's growing. It's an expanding property tax base that will allow a community to be able to build hospitals, build sports and entertainment centers, be able to build housing. If you have a community that's retracting and not growing, you will not have the property tax base to be able to build the institutions and provide the services that residents want. So, plus also, if you have a community that's strong economically and robust, there are jobs and jobs for people and for people to be able to support their families. They need jobs. And so what does this tell us? It tells us that there's been a 2.4% increase in building activity. And it's interesting where that's taken place. 173% increase in industrial building. For example, $25 million Mitsui High Tech, and they produce the high-tech cores for electric motors. And the North American leading producer is right here in Brantford, and they supply the entire North American auto industry. Barry, I can never pronounce it. All about the chocolate manufacturer. They 200 jobs. That building is about to be constructed. We even have the permit for Costco. There is a permit that was issued for Costco and a gas bar. It's issued. I can't tell you when Costco is actually going to build, but they've got the permit to do it. We also have one of the lowest unemployment rates in southwestern Ontario. We also have one of the highest labor participation rates. And why is that important? That's telling you that as your community is growing in population, that many of those people that are coming to your community, newcomers, they're working or they're looking for work. They're not sitting idle. We also have some very promising data in terms of inquiries through the Business Resource Center up over 100%. And those are people that are wanting to establish businesses. And those businesses will grow and employ others. If you have that declining, if that figure is declining, that tells you you're a community that's in decline. We're not. We have a 31% increase in sports tourism. We have a 38% increase in attendance at the Sanderson Center. That speaks to staff working very diligently to make the Sanderson Center as interesting as possible for residents. We have the farmers market, a 60% increase. We also are doing innovative programming. We're helping Laurier-Conestoga Six Nations Polytech develop a program that will better coordinate the educational programs provided in our community with the employment opportunities that are available in our community. So better match post-secondary programs with what the reality is of our labor market here today. So I think we can draw as a council and as a community some comfort from this report, this economic year in review, and be confident not only about our present, but also our future. I probably went beyond 4 minutes, so you probably want to cut me off.
Let's call the question.
Mr. Chairman, you need to have a look around the room before you call the question.
Apologies, Councillor Martin.
Thank you. I thought you saw me when you saw the mayor's hand up, but apparently you didn't. Sorry. One of the things talked about in the report is the summer company program. This is a program for high school students or post-secondary students who want to start their own business over the summer instead of looking for a job. I think it's an excellent program. Not only do you get some startup money, but more importantly, you get mentorship from successful business people who will help you build your company and make it successful to earn some money so that you can return to post-secondary or save up to go to post-secondary if you're in high school. So if there's anybody out there that has a young person who has an idea for a summer job or summer company of their own, I suggest you check into this program. It's a very good program. And I've seen some of the results in previous years, and it's been phenomenal what companies, young people have come up with just to make some money over the summer so that they can continue their post-secondary. So I encourage young people that if you have any thoughts of starting your own company, to check into it. Thank you.
Seeing no more comments, call the vote.
Item 721 carries on a recorded vote of 10-0. Those councillors voting in favor: Councillor Ventelberg, Samuel, Carpenter, McCurry, Martin, Celeste, Caputo, Sullivan, Sicoli, and Mayor Davis.
Okay, we have 3 resolutions on tonight's agenda. First one is Councillor McCreary. Will you be waiving the rules to consider this resolution outside the budget process?
Absolutely.
Still don't get it, but.
How ironic is that? It's
Isn't it?
seconded by
sorry.
Councillor Martin. Yeah, thank you. So wait a minute, I'm on the wrong one here. 8.1, yeah, sorry. Yeah, Counselor Martin's a seconder. So move that section 1511(6) of chapter 15 of the city's municipal code be waived to deem the item urgent in order to be considered outside the budget process. And I hope everyone sees the irony in this. And do you want me to read this as the waiver?
Yes, please.
Okay. I'm still not, I'm getting Counselor Sicoli's resolution. Yeah, Counselor Sicoli's resolution is before us. Oh, yeah, it is. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, so whereas in August of 23, staff provided a report entitled Notice of Motion Deadline 2023-152, which identified the disruption of notices of motion to the administrative business planning cycle as it related to the development of staff work plans. And whereas council approved staff recommended changes to amend the procedural bylaw to refer all resolutions initiated as notices of motion to the annual budget process unless identified as an urgent resolution requiring a motion to waive the rules. And whereas since August of 2023, committee has waived the rules 15 out of 17 notices of motion indicating the changes to the procedural bylaw are ineffective. And whereas staff will continue to recommend notices of motion requiring funding, excuse me, be referred to the annual budget process. Now therefore be it resolved that staff be directed to amend the procedural bylaw to remove the requirement that all resolutions initiated as notices of motion be referred to the annual estimates process for consideration and necessary bylaw be presented to City Council for adoption. And I'll be brief, Mr. Chair. It seemed like a pretty good idea, but it turned out not to be. It simply added an extra step to everything that we consider here. And I hope everybody will support this tonight. It's simply returning.
Sorry,
to-
Councillor McCreary, I'd like to, we have to place the vote as to waiving the rules.
No, sorry, Mr. Chair, this isn't a waiver of the rules. This is the resolution. The notice was introduced earlier.
Through the chair, we need to waive the rules to consider the resolution outside of the budget process. That's what we're gonna be voting on first, right?
Exactly what you.
I could say that I planned it that way to hear that explanation, but I did not, I must admit. Yes, so we have to waive the rules. As I said earlier, in the textbook definition of irony, we have to waive the rules to consider this resolution to no longer have to waive the rules. Yes, thank you.
Like to call a vote?
The waiving of the rules carries on a recorded vote of 9-0. Those councillors voting in favor, councillors Ventelberg, Samuel, Carpenter, McCurry, Martin, Celeste, Caputo, Sullivan, and Mayor Davis, noting Councillor Sicoli was out of the room at the time of the vote.
Councillor McCreary, you carry on with your motion, please.
Thank you, Chair. And the seconder again is Councillor Martin, and I will not repeat the body of the resolution. But this does appear to be the year of irony. We had to waive the rules to introduce the resolution to no longer have to waive the rules, much as we introduced a committee to examine committees. This seemed like a good idea at the time to just about everybody. It turned out not to be. It simply added another step to the process, which served no purpose. This returns us to our previous procedure. And yet in every resolution that's introduced to us, if it does have budget implications, a member of council certainly can move that to be considered at the budget process outside of what we've done here. So hopefully everybody will support this tonight and we can get back to regular business as we used to conduct.
Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will too be supporting this. I was actually one of the ones that voted against this motion when it came forth originally because of this exact reason. So I'll be happy to support it.
Councillor Carpenter.
I too was one of the other lone councillors that voted against this resolution when it came forward to take the rights away from members of council to be able to deal with resolutions immediately as they're needed by your constituents. And I understand the logic was, well, we staff don't have it in their work plans. Well, staff work plans need to be fluid. Councilors' work days and our obligations are fluid with our constituents all the time. And when constituents have problems that need fixing, they need to be addressed as soon as possible, not at a budget time in a budget cycle. So you'll always find me voting against anything that takes the right away from a member of council to exercise their responsibilities to help their constituents. And that's why I voted against it when it came to me the first time. And that's why I'm happy to see this resolution today, and I'll be supporting it going forward.
Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I never understood why something that had no monetary impact had to be referred to estimates. It didn't make sense then, and it doesn't make sense now. So I'm quite happy to support this to fix that issue and see issues that have no monetary implications dealt with immediately so that things can carry forward in a timely manner. Thank you.
Councillor Van Tilburg.
Yes, I too was one of those that didn't like this one from the get-go. But the thing is that there was some merit in this, in that where it failed was in the fact that we were having to refer things that have no monetary effect on the budget, including, ironically, as Councillor McCreary has clearly shown us, the resolution to do just this, which has no monetary value, had to be waived. And he also had to wait the time for the regular notice of motion. I found that aspect incredibly problematic. I was shown by the number of times that we'd all had to bypass that. And I would have thought a simple wording could have reflected that change. We will be going back to the original way, but like I said, I do want it known that there is some merit into having things referred to the budget process when there is monies involved that we may not have, because sometimes when it's important and constituents are all over you, we tend to try to do everything in our power to get that money, but then we really can offset other things down the road that we do need. And eventually, even if you got it early, you're paying for it later. And that's when we find out at the end of the year. So there, like I said, there was some merit in going through the budget process, but overall, I'm very happy to see this change, and I hope it's passed unanimously.
Mayor Davis.
Well, seems like tonight I'm always seem to be speaking to the contrary. And on this one, I will speak to the contrary, and I'll speak to why this was done originally. And it was done because we were having a number of resolutions that were really kind of very operational in nature and not policy oriented. And what they were doing was, it was counselors short-circuiting policies and procedures that were intended to promote fairness and equity, and also resolutions that would have a budget impact, and doing that outside of the budget process. And so, yeah, I respect the right of a counselor to bring forward resolutions to deal with issues in their ward. But when these resolutions were coming to us, they weren't coming with any staff input. And so taking care of residents in your ward may have created a situation where now staff were not able to take care of some issues with residents in other wards, and also would have budget implications where you do ad hoc increases to the budget. So I'm going to support this on the understanding that at council, I'm going to bring forward an amendment that will require, whenever a counselor is bringing forward a resolutions, and many times trying to short circuit policies and procedures, there will be a comment. There should be a comment section in the resolution. So we have input from staff, one, whether or not this is complies with policies and procedures that are established for reasons, and whether there's a budget impact. And that way we can then, counselors will have the ability and the right on an unrestricted basis to bring forward resolutions. But the rest of us, as we're being asked to consider those resolutions, will know what the impact will be of those resolutions on city operations, the allocation of staff resources, and also our budget. We need to have that.
Would you be considering that as a friendly?
Well, I'm working on the wording for it, and I'm just telling council members that I'll be bringing that forward, hopefully significantly in advance of council meetings, so we have time to consider it. But it's to bring in a measure of balance to the process.
Going to second time speakers, Counselor Carpenter.
Yes, to staff, how much money in the council contingency fund? Have a balance, an idea what that balance is?
Through the chair to Councillor Carpenter, I would need to look up the corporate contingency balance, but are you perhaps referring to the council priorities balance?
Yeah, we have two funds, right?
Yeah, so council priorities is just over $1 million currently. And I can respond later.
Even ballpark would be fine. on the other.
Probably 1.5
Yeah,
million.
that helps my point. So we've got $2.5 million in reserve funds. So if it's not having it, we can always finance things that we want to do out of those on a regular basis. The question would be if it adds, if the mayor's talking about amendment coming forward, if it adds ongoing operational expenses, then I can see that concern. I can support that. But if it's just simply expenses, when council has contingency funds and operational funds to access those things, such as stop signs, speed bumps, or what it might be in the ward, then that makes sense. You know, it's our job to bring things forward. And I don't to make any, whether it's stop staff, if we do it, staff do it all the time. They bring forward recommendations to eliminate parking signs, for example. And then they go out and take the parking signs off. That's operational costs. Now, we didn't bring a resolution to do that. Staff put that on their work plan. Somebody talked about stop signs or something like that, and it came forward. These things, everything that we do, every resolution we pass costs money somewhere. Somebody has to implement that. Someone records that there's a cost regardless. So for those that say, well, if it has a financial impact, maybe it should go to the budget. Everything we do has a financial impact. So I'll support this because council will decide each time whether that's important or not by some policy that takes away my right. You'll never get my support for that. But you'll get my support that allows council disagrees with me at that time. That happens quite often. I accept that. That's democracy. You know, I don't belong to some block or something, but that's how it works. So, and the way it works, it works. So whatever, but I won't have a policy directed by council that takes away my rights, as I've seen happen so many times in the last 5 years.
Counselor McCrary.
Thank you, Councillor Sullivan, for telling me to turn the microphone on. Much appreciated. So I would further edify members of the committee by indicating that 1, 2, 3, the fourth whereas says, whereas staff will continue to recommend notices requiring funds be referred to the budget. I believe that that's quite explicit in respect to giving further clarity. And those who feel that they want to get further information from staff can do that during proceedings and ask staff what impact that has upon their work plan, their budget. And then the 11 of us can make a decision on a case-by-case basis about whether or not it's something that should be advanced. And I think I heard mention earlier of an amendment. I think it's wrong to put staff on the spot to expect them to engage in a debate on paper with members of council, giving contrary opinions to a notice of motion that'll become a resolution to be debated by this group.
Not seeing anything further. Mr. Clerk, may we call the vote?
The vote for item 8.1 carries on a recorded vote of 10-0. Those councillors voting in favor, Councillor Vendelborg, Samble, Carpenter, McCrary, Martin, Celeste, Caputo, Sullivan, Scully, Mayor Davis.
Okay, moving on to 8.2 condominium conversion policy. Councillor Carpenter, will you be waiving the rules to consider this resolution?
Yes, I'll be bringing forward a motion to waive the rules, Mr. Chair. Thank you. It's moved by myself, seconded by Mayor Davis. That's section 15.11.6 of Chapter 15 of the City of Brantford Municipal Code be waived to deem the item urgent in order to be considered outside the budget process, whereas the conversion of rental apartment buildings to condominium tenure has the potential to displace existing residents from their homes, deplete the supply of purpose-built rentals and affordable housing options, impact vacancy rates and average rents, and does not increase the overall supply of housing units. And whereas priority action areas in the 2023-2026 Council Priorities Report include the diversification of housing to ensure that affordable housing with multi-use buildings is included in the overall growth plan for the city of Brantford, and ensure that low-income housing is distributed evenly across the city. And whereas council wishes to protect residents of rental housing in order to meet the needs of current and future residents, and whereas the Municipal Act 2001, Chapter C 2599-1 enables the municipality to prohibit the regulation of conversions of residential rental properties that contain more than 6 units to a purpose other than the purpose of a residential rental property. And whereas the Planning Act provides that an official plan shall contain such policies and measures as are practical to ensure the adequate provisions of affordable housing. Now therefore be resolved that staff be directed to investigate options and best practices and report back to council in the third quarter of 2024 with specific recommendations, criteria, and conditions to consider for limiting the conversion of rental apartment buildings to condominium, including policies, regulations, and requirements that may be implemented through a potential official plan amendment and or rental housing protection bylaw.
Okay, so we're gonna vote on waiving of the rules.
The motion to waive the rules carries on a recorded vote of 8-2. Those councillors voting in favor: Councillor Ventelberg, Samuel, Carpenter, Celeste, Caputo, Sullivan, Segoli, Mayor Davis. Those councillors voting against: Councillor McCreary and Councillor Morton.
Okay, Councilor Carpenter, would you like to speak to the motion, please?
Yeah, first of all, I want to thank Mayor Davis for this. I've been raising this issue for some time to him. I've probably been burning his ear off with these discussions. We've had some mutual discussions regarding what's happened when a conversion has happened in the city of a rental unit that was expired, it's past its 50 years life cycle, and then it gets converted to a condominium. And then the condominium conversion happens and they're no longer rental units. They are sold off to individuals. Then the individual condo corporation, under the legislation in the Condo Act, has to then apply for a reserve fund study as the legislation requires it to do. And when it does that, it finds out that the building is 50 years old, that the elevators no longer meet the requirement, that the parking garage needs to be replaced at $5 or $6 million, that the patios and the balconies need to be replaced. And what happens is the condo owner buys this condo for $300,000 or $400,000, and then finds out that that $50 condo fee that was suggested originally in the original condo plan now is $400 or $500 a month. And then they cannot sell their condo for even what they paid for it. They're stuck with it and they got to pay a lot of money to fix it up. So unsuspecting condo owners find themselves in difficulty. And what we find ourselves in is a shortage of rental units. Those who were rental units are no longer rental units. We don't want to discourage condo conversion. We want to make sure it's done under the right conditions. For example, maybe the condo, if you're gonna do a condo conversion, you do a reserve fund study first, find out what that building needs before you sell it to unscrupulous people that don't know. Or so unknowing people, I should say, they don't know what the building is going to need or require. So some rules and regulations around this, so it's clear for both sides, would be helpful. And we have, Councilor Martin and I actually formed a condominium association many years ago to represent condos in the city of Brantford, so they were getting a fair shake when we were providing for services to condos, garbage collection and so forth. And that organization still exists, helping condo owners across this city and the county to do great work. So I'm just hoping that what we're asking here for staff to come back with options, and then council will consider the options. So I want to thank Mayor Davis for helping this resolution get written and for supporting me on it. Thank you very much.
Mayor Davis.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And I agree with everything Councillor Carpenter has said, that Councillor Carpenter and I are quite familiar with a building that's not far from my condo that I live in. It's not the condo I live in, where it was a condo, it was a rental building that was converted. And there was a problem with the infrastructure, and now the condo owners are facing special assessments of $50,000, $60,000 to correct this. And I don't know for sure, but I know there are cases in the past where the owner of a rental building, realizing there was major repairs to be done,
would go the condo route, so that would have to be borne by condo owners. But I also support this because, the rental stock that we have of our housing, all the housing in our community, rentals are an important part of our housing stock. You think of many seniors who might sell their home and they want to live off that equity, they're going to look for a rental. They'll be looking for a rental apartment. I think back to when I first entered the housing market after I graduated from university, it was to rent an apartment. That's how most people enter the housing market. They do through rentals. There can be life situations which require someone to sell their home, but they'll need to rent. And there hasn't been a lot of rental buildings constructed in the last several decades, and that's because they just haven't, for developers, they don't make as much economic sense as condos. There's a better return in condos. Federal government's trying to change that to their credit through various tax and depreciation policies that will make it more attractive to build rental buildings. But in the meantime, I think it's reasonable as a policy to protect the rental stock you have, to look at when you will allow condo conversions and when you won't. Perhaps it might be tied to the vacancy rate for rental accommodation. When it drops below a certain level, generally as a matter of policy, you would not allow for condo conversions. I know people will say to me, well, you convert a condo and the condo owner will own it and they can then rent it. But the problem with that is the person who's the tenant doesn't have the same kind of security they have when they're renting a building or they're renting a unit in a building that's a rental building. They have certain protections in the Landlord and Tenant Act that someone doesn't have who is renting from a condo owner. Anyways, so I think it's a good idea to look at what it is we might consider bringing forward in the way of policies and procedures to protect the right of building owners to do condo conversions in the right circumstances, to protect condo owners who take on a unit from a building that's been converted. And also, if in certain situations and economic circumstances, we should have a policy that discourages condo conversions. So look forward to receiving the staff report. Hope this is passed tonight.
Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I'd like to clarify that the tribunal does not differentiate between apartment buildings and individual condo units that are rented. The tenant's rights are the tenant's rights regardless of where they rent. And all they have to do is make an application to the tribunal if there's something that the landlord is doing that isn't correct. The reason why some of these older buildings are being converted to condo is because we have a two-tier system for landlords. If your building is a certain age, you're covered under rent controls and you're limited to 1-2% a year. There was 1 year it was 0. You were not allowed to raise the rent 1 year at all. And any buildings that are newer, they can charge whatever they want for the rent because the governments have realized that rent controls don't work. But instead of taking them off completely, they only took it off for buildings going forward, which is perpetuating this two-tier system that is messing up our rental situation. And that's why developers started building condos instead of rental, was because of rent controls. And the only way to fix that is to remove them completely. There was a time when the provincial government asked for a study on rent controls. It was suggested that they phase them out. At the time, that was 6%. And they decided instead of, well, phasing it out, we're going to drop it to 3%. And that was under the NDP government. And that just made matters worse. The benefit to the city when one of these buildings goes condo, the property taxes actually go up. The multifamily has a multiplier on it. I'm not sure where it is now, but it's probably around the 2 times mark. But because the condos are assessed at a much higher value, the property taxes are actually higher at the residential rate than they were for the apartment building at the multifamily residential rate, which had a multiplier applied to it. So it's beneficial for tax reasons to allow these buildings to be converted. So, but because of the two-tier system, you got an older building, you might get a $700 rent for a 2-bedroom apartment. A similar apartment in a newer building can rent for $1,500 with no rent control protection. So it's ridiculous the way that the whole system is rigged and skews things towards newer buildings. The one term I hear that bugs me is renoviction. which is ridiculous. If a landlord gives notice to a tenant to get out because they want to renovate, that tenant has the right to go back into that unit once the renovations are done at the same rent. So I'm not sure why any landlord would go through that process, put, thousands of dollars into a unit to fix it up, only to get the same rent for it. It just doesn't make business sense. You're better off to wait for the tenant to move out on their own, then renovate, and then you can charge whatever rent you want and whatever the market will bear. So I understand, some of the logic behind this, but I just can't support it because I don't see it as beneficial for the community or for tenants for that matter. Thank you.
Counselor Samuel?
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to thank Councillor Carpenter and Mayor Davis for bringing this forward tonight. I was pleased to see this because I think it's very important that we do look at protecting our residential rental housing. So I'll be pleased to support this tonight. Thank you.
Counselor Sullivan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I too will be supporting this, and I would like to thank the mayor and Councillor Carpenter for this collaboration. I think we're looking at this from our rental stock, and obviously we have to, but I think we also need to look at this from the other perspective is the prices of housing now is ridiculous. So most people, when they're buying their first home, they are looking at buying a condominium per se. And if we have a condo, like one that's got a lot of problems with it, that's not what a first-time buyer needs. They're using this as a stepping stone. So I think this is a great idea to get the ball rolling. I know Councillor Carpenter and Councillor Samuel and I spoke to this in detail on our lovely trip to Kingston. And like I said, you'll have my full support.
Counselor McCreary?
Chair, thank you. I do have some questions through you to staff. This is giving you a deadline of, I believe, there goes my screen. I believe the third quarter of this calendar year. Is that correct?
Through the chair of the committee, that's correct.
Does that give you enough time to plumb the depths of Ontario government legislation and view similar legislation in place in other municipalities in Ontario and elsewhere?
Through the chair, it is an ambitious timeline, but that is what we thought we could achieve.
Okay, so you had some input into the timeline then?
That's correct.
Okay, I was concerned about that. Thank you. Now, there was a period of comment the Ontario government established for Bill 23, was there not? And did we comment on that? And has that time frame lapsed?
The timeframe for comment on Bill 23 would have lapsed by now. Yeah.
Do you recollect if we did comment at the time? Maybe you could search your archive and memory for that and let us know when we get this to council, if that would be okay, Alan.
Yep.
To your knowledge, what sort of restrictions does Bill 23 put on municipalities with respect to unreasonable regulations concerning condominium conversion?
Through the chair of the committee, I'd have to take another look at the legislation. I
Okay,
don't believe there's a specific prohibition.
that'll be part of your research. Okay, thank you. I guess there's some merit to this.
If I
Oh,
can,
sorry.
Council, I just, I know you referred to Bill 23. I know the recent legislation last week, there's reference to condo conversions and rental units as well. And I'll let Alan answer more of that specifically to that when we get to but it is mentioned in that, not just, I think that was Bill 158 that was this week as well. So it is referenced in there as well.
It's so hard to keep up with the bills. As many people in our community experience with the high cost of living, gasoline, and the ever increasing city tax rates. Yes, thank you for that, CAO.
Counselor Van Tilburg?
It's been an excellent debate. I think all things are well covered. I really want to thank Councillor Carpenter and Mayor Davis for bringing this forward. Councillor Carpenter with reflecting on the fact that when these conversions happen and they're in an old apartment building, what can happen to that condo owner? They are incredibly caught in a bind, and one that's almost impossible to get out of. In fact, I have to wonder about some of the transactions that happen and how people get hosed, quite frankly. That's the only way I could describe it. That is incredibly problematic, and we've had a few incidents in this city that are well publicized. The other thing that the mayor has hit on is our rental housing stock. And each time this happens, that reduction in rental housing stock, that's a real thing, that's a tangible thing. Those are generally the more affordable apartments that people can rent. They're not in a position for condos. And the mayor was also correct in stating that what happens when they are transitioned to a condo, and yes, they can be rented, we have this thing, personal security and safety really doesn't happen because those rents can go up at any time. And that's the reality of what we're dealing with. And I think this covers all aspects, because as Councillor Martin did express, it makes more sense, it makes more money from an economic position on why these things are happening in our community at this time. So I look forward to this report, because I don't believe that you can look at any one of those positions in a vacuum. And we have to view this from the community that we live in. All three things are happening. All three things are important and need to be addressed. And I think that I got to applaud you for bringing this forward, and I'm looking forward to the staff report.
I have a question. Almost on the lines of what Councillor Martin was saying. So if we're taking an existing apartment building wants to sell off as condos, should there not be a process where a permit or permits or something needs to be done to be able to see the condition of the actual building, parking, infrastructure, everything along those lines prior to? I mean, if I had to put an addition onto my house, I have to go through a process. So I just question to staff, I don't know if we've ever done this, and I'm sure we probably missed it when we went down Colburn, probably a couple other buildings, but is there something that could be done internally that would bring forth any concerns or issues before we put something up?
Through the chair of the committee, that's one of the issues or options that we'd be looking at through this review. Some municipalities in the criteria that they establish for whether or not a condo conversion could be allowed might be a building condition assessment to help inform whether or not that should go ahead. So that is, again, something we'll be looking at through this process, and may or may not be something we recommend.
Because I appreciate what everyone is saying and I understand it, but I mean, I'm just throwing something out. We got apartments that were just built recently within the last 10 years on Park Road. If one of those buildings was going to convert to a condo versus rental, there aren't any issues with that. There aren't any parking concerns. There aren't anything in there. So I'm not sure whether or not this is going to take care of that, but I certainly do have a strong feeling that anything that has an aged building needs to be assessed completely before we end up in situations that'll go down on Colburn Street. So thank you. So going to second time speakers, Mayor Davis.
Yeah, I wanted to clarify something I said, that how you are somewhat more vulnerable when you're renting from a condo owner than if you're renting from a corporation that owns a rental building. And that's because they're an owner of a rental unit. If they need it for their own purposes, they have a right to terminate the lease. And so if you're renting in a rental building and the owner of the building is a corporation, well, they can't use that. They can't use that method for eviction. But if you're renting from an individual, many of these people who buy condos as investments, they're individuals. And if you're renting from that person, and if a member of their immediate family wants to move in, you get evicted, not with proper notice and whatnot. So that's why if you're looking at providing secure rental agreements, arrangements for individuals, residents, usually they're better protected if they're renting in a building that from a corporate landlord. So that's the problem with these conversions. They're generally happening with buildings that are rental buildings and they have a corporate owner. And so, yes, you can have people that will then rent those units from the condo owners after the condo conversion, but they're more vulnerable. And that's one of the reasons you do this. But I want to make one point clear. We're not looking to prohibit condo conversions. What we're doing is we're asking staff to recommend a policy to us that will protect those residents of older buildings if they buy a condo, right? Okay. And also if there are certain circumstances where we want economic circumstances, where we want to discourage condo conversions.
Counselor Carpenter.
Thank you. If I may wrap, you know, a reserve fund study that condominiums are required to do every 3 years and then update every other 3 years is an engineering firm or an architectural firm that comes in and looks at the structure of the building. It says the windows are going to last this long and need to be replaced. The doors are going to last this long, the plumbing, right down to the sewers and the whole infrastructure of the building, what it needs to be replaced. And what that does on the condo corporations have to do this every 3 years, and then update the numbers with the financial numbers to what costs are the following 3 years. This is an ongoing process condos must do now. And they must put that money in the reserve fund so they can fund those things as they need, as the roof needs replaced, as the elevators need replaced. All I'm saying is, if you're going to do a condo conversion, do the reserve fund study. If the reserve fund study says you need $1 million in the bank, put that $1 million in the reserve fund that is going to be required anyways. If it says it's a 2-year-old building, it only needs $10,000 or $20,000, whatever it may be, put that in the reserve fund study so the buyers aren't getting stung with having to do it when they do the update reserve fund study. That's the one piece. The other piece would be if there's a shortage of rental spaces in the community now, as we have in Brantford now, do you want to allow conversion to make more shortage of spaces, to increase the shortage of rental housing in the community, make it harder for other renters trying to find rental accommodation? Maybe we want to set a target there too, but what are the conditions that make it so? We're not trying to take someone's rights away. We're trying to make sure that everyone's rights are protected at the same time. Our job is to protect the community as a whole, not just one group, but everybody. And I'm hoping that we can come back with something that we can agree to that does that. The discussion about rental evictions, or maybe we need a community group that's going to represent people to let them know that they don't have to leave. But although when you do a renovation, you can also apply to the rent review board for a top up because you've spent some money on a renovation, recoup that in increases in rents. We've also seen rental apartment buildings in the city of Brantford now all of a sudden decide a new owner bought them. Okay, we're going to start charging you for parking. You know, do the owners know that to look into their lease to see if they had a parking spot as part of the lease? Maybe they did. Maybe they didn't. When the lease was renewed, the parking space wasn't included, and now they've got to pay a couple $100 more a month for rent for a parking spot. That's not included in the rent controls. There's other options. There's things happening to people out there that we need to be aware of. And I think this is just going to find some of the answers for us and what other communities are doing. Thank you.
Not seeing anything further. Can we call the vote?
Mayor Davis, if I can please have your vote. Item 8.2 carries on a recorded vote of 8-2. Those councillors voting in favor, Councillors Vanderborg, Samuel, Carpenter, McCreary, Celeste, Sullivan, Sequela, Mayor Davis. Those councillors voting against, Councillor Martin and Councillor Caputo.
Okay, moving on to 8.3, recognizing Brantford-born Phil Hartman. Counselor Sicoli, will you be waiving the rules to consider this resolution outside the budget
Yeah,
process?
further drilling in Councillor McCreary's point here, let's bring forth a motion to waive the rules. That section 15.11.6 of chapter 15 of the.
So can you state your seconder?
Councillor Samuel.
Okay.
Of the City of Brantford Municipal Code be waived to deem the item urgent in order to be considered outside of the budget process. And I'll read the entire resolution at this point. Whereas Phil Edward Hartman, nee Hartman, was born in Brantford on September 24th, 1948. And whereas Phil Hartman is a well-known and tremendously gifted screen and voice actor, comedian, screenwriter, and graphic designer. And whereas Hartman is known for his many accomplishments, including but not limited to his work in co-developing the character Pee Wee Herman, performing 8 seasons of NBC's Saturday Night Live from 1986 to 1994, and voicing multiple characters in the Fox animated series The Simpsons. And whereas Hartman is inducted into the Canada and Hollywood Walks of Fame in 2012 and 2014 respectively, and whereas Hartman was inducted into the City of Brantford's Walk of Fame, now known as Prominence Point, in 1997, where he attended at the ceremony in person, returning to Brantford for the first time since leaving the city at age 10. And whereas the untimely death of Hartman on May 28th, 1998 shocked the entertainment community with statements from colleagues and friends remembering Hartman as warm, professional, loyal, and a decidedly regular guy. And whereas public art celebrates the culture, history, people, events, and locations that make our community unique. And whereas the City of Brantford recognizes the value of art in public places that reflects the diversity of our community, provides unique attractions for citizens and visitors, and strengthens community pride. And whereas the City of Brantford has recognized well-known Brantford-born citizens such as Wayne Gretzky, Walter Gretzky, and Lauren S. Harris in public art collections, now therefore be it resolved that staff in collaboration with Councillor Sicoli be directed to engage the wider community, the performing arts community, Nova Vita, the family of Phil Hartman, and comedians to develop the themes related to celebrating Phil Hartman, to provide to the selected artists to design the mural, and B, that staff retain the services of Mural Roots to commission a piece of art by a professional muralist to commemorate and celebrate the life and work of Phil Hartman, and C, that up to $42,500 be funded from the Public Art Reserve for the Phil Hartman Public Art Project, and that up to $42,500 be funded by Council Priorities Reserve for the Phil Hartman Public Art Project, and that staff be directed to source alternate funding, grants, and sponsorships for the mural to offset costs, and that staff be directed to apply for a heritage permit to paint the mural on the east wall of the Sanderson Center once a conceptual design for the mural has been finalized by the professional muralist. And to speak to waiving the rules,
So I'd like to call a vote on the rules.
well, can I
Waiving the
speak
rules?
to why I'm asking to waive the rules?
Yes.
Okay. This was actually brought forward as a notice of motion in September or October of last year. And there was some error. It never actually made it as a resolution. So in my head, since it was going to go through the budget process at that time and it just through error didn't, I would like to move this along at this point now that we've identified that.
Call a vote.
The motion to waive the rules carries on a recorded vote of 10-0. Those councillors voting in favor, Councillor Vanderborg, Samuel, Carpenter, McCurry, Martin, Salas, Caputo, Sullivan, Sicoli, Mayor Davis.
So Councillor Sicoli, can you state your seconder for the motion?
Now actually bringing this forward, it'll be seconded again by Councillor Samwell. And speaking to it, Phil Hartman was a wildly successful actor, comedian, screenwriter, voice actor. And my favorite character is, hi, I'm Troy McClure from The Simpsons. And everybody on earth knows that. He was born in Brantford, his family's still in Brantford. And I thought this would be such a nice gesture to honor a part of Brantford's contribution to the international arts and culture stage. The location of the Sanderson Center is being floated around and was selected for a variety of reasons. Number one, it's the hub of arts and culture here in Brantford, in my opinion. It helps to beautify and enhance our downtown core. And the mural will incorporate like interactive pieces. So people who are visiting the Sanderson Center, or it's our intention at this point that it incorporate interactive pieces. And you may have seen examples of this if you're in Toronto, where they're, wings are painted on the wall and everyone takes pictures in front of the wings and so forth. So that's sort of the vision that we have. We figured we have a lot of people visiting the Sanderson Center, both from in town and out of town, dance comps and things like that. And we want to encourage people to visit the mural, take picters, tag the Sanderson Center in it, and spread the word of what a great piece that we have here. We decided to collaborate with Nova Vita on this because sadly, Phil Hartman was a victim of intimate partner violence. And as you know, that's something that I'm quite passionate about. So we decided to engage Nova Vita and see if they want to contribute to the discussion, if we can honor that piece of his life in some way, in a positive way on that wall. He was, like I said, he met his untimely demise in 1998 as a victim of domestic violence. This mural would be such a beautiful tribute to his life and his contributions. We opted to suggest retaining the services of Mural Roots. Mural Roots is a company that will vet the artists and make sure that we have retained the best artists possible. Just because of the size of this wall, it takes a really special artist to be able to design and execute a piece of this size. The Hartman family was reached out to, and they were quite supportive of this. Staff has been doing such a great job with making sure everybody who needs to be involved is involved. And Sarah Monroe has worked so hard on this, and I wish she were here, but Kara is here tonight. She's been doing so much to help me move this forward. So we have every intention of continuing to engage the Hartman family in this so long as they want to be involved in it, but they have been supportive. We have a reserve account to fund projects exactly like this, public art pieces. So I'm hoping that we can dip into that account. I know that staff was looking at various grants and sponsorship opportunities to help offset this cost for us. I do believe there are some out there, just due to some staffing turnovers, we didn't actually get that information for today, but we are working towards that, and that's our goal. We quite often sit up here and have to debate all these really heavy items. And this is just something really beautiful that we can do for our community, and really move along towards beautifying our downtown core. I'm really happy to be supportive of this. Now, there were some small changes in here from what was brought forward as a notice of motion. I wanted to make sure that we were going through the proper routes and the proper avenues in regards to getting the heritage permit to make sure that we can paint on this wall. I'm getting yelled at to stop, so put me down for a second speaking opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Secoli. Councillor Samwell?
Thank you, through you, Chair. I do have a small amendment that I would like to bring forward, which I understand would be friendly, I think. And so that's just to add to clause A, under the folks that would be consulted, the Economic Development, Tourism and Culture Initiatives Committee.
That's friendly as well.
Ended. Councillor Sullivan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to staff, within this concept of painting this mural, what do we have as I guess a protectant of the mural from being like vandalized or graffitied, and what would be looking at a cost to make sure that we're maintaining it from being destroyed?
Through the chair, Kara Davey, Manager of Tourism, Culture and Sport. So typically when you hire a professional artist, that eliminates the risk of tagging significantly. We've done this with other walls in the past. It's when you have the blank canvas like it is now, that's when it's really susceptible to vandalism, graffiti, tagging. But once you have art in place, we find that eliminates that issue altogether. Now, logistically speaking, when you hire a professional artist, they also put polyurethane coats on it and UV protective coats and all these things that mitigate actual graffiti. If that does occur, then it's easily wipeable and removable even by our own park staff team.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Van Tilburg?
Thank you, Chair, and you've done an excellent job tonight. Yeah, it's gotta be 6 months or more when Councillor Sicoli was bouncing this off me in a room at some time, and I'd wondered what happened to it. And I received the call from Sarah saying, "Hey, can you contact Paul and see if he'd be interested in supporting such a project?" And you know, in Paul's fashion, he just said, "What can a Hartman do to support this endeavor?" That's just how they are. And if you know anything about the Hartmans and Paul Hartman, he spent, oh my gosh, 3 years lobbying and getting signatures to get his brother on that Walk of Fame. He failed a couple times and then finally got it, and it happened in 2012. So that's a long time ago. And he came to Brantford, spent some night time over here with some residents. He wasn't in the community at the time. And he got a lot of signatures from this city. And that's never been forgotten on him, because when they were here, they were small children at the time. So, you know, they've just got those flash memories of living in Brantford, but they have fond memories. So he's looking forward to coming back. It's really nice to hear that from him. I'm looking forward to meeting him and seeing what transpires with this mural. And I thank Councillor Sicoli for bringing this forward, because she's mentioned just what a phenomenal actor Phil was, and the tragedy and his loss at the time. And you know, this is a great way for this city to tribute him. So I commend Councillor Sicoli for bringing this forward, and I'm really glad that it showed up. I was wondering what had happened, so glad to see it's here now.
Councillor McCreary.
Chair, thank you. I support the principle of this as well. I think the man certainly speaks to everything Brantford. I would like to inquire of staff of the practicalities of the project in the place where it's proposed. Are staff aware of who the owner is of the vacant lot that this would face?
Through the chair, no, we're not aware.
It's not City of Brantford?
I don't believe so.
I can.
It's not the city of Brantford,
Yeah,
it's private ownership.
Yeah, it's private ownership. And would you say that it's currently used as a parking lot? Would you say that that's the highest and best use that can be expected of that property in perpetuity?
No, it wouldn't.
No. So could you explain what might happen should the owner decide to build a 3-story building there?
Through the chair, murals are not a very long staying piece. We anticipate that it would last about 10 years. So being as that there's no permit that's been placed for that property at this time, it's a safe bet to assume that we would get a good duration of that 10 years out of that wall.
Has this been commented on by the Brantford Heritage Committee?
Through the chair, no, it has not at this time, but that's why we made the friendly amendment earlier. It will go through the Heritage Committee. The heritage designation at the Sanderson Center really applies to the interior of the Sanderson Center and not the exterior, especially that wall in particular. It's just the gray stucco that's been painted several times in the past. So we're really advocating for professional muralists to do a great job on that wall, and Heritage Committee will be looped in, as will Public Art Subcommittee.
That was my next question. Public Arts Subcommittee, they'll be consulted as well. I do recall at the time, the Heritage Committee had mixed feelings about painting it gray. So it'd be interesting to see what the comment is about a mural. I suspect they'll probably be quite interested in that. So vandalism, is this mural going to extend to ground level?
Through the chair, it'll be the whole wall. That is what the, we obtained a quote, and that's where the $85,000 budget is coming from.
Okay.
That's what a professional muralist quoted the wall to do it in its entirety.
And is it our intent to sole source this to this company?
Mural Roots is one of a kind. So Mural Roots is really, if you're familiar with the public art calls for artists we've done in the past, we have enlisted Glenhurst Services to do that, to be our advocate in the art community for public art. Mural Roots is a not-for-profit based in Toronto. They've been around since 1990. They've done 75 murals in Toronto alone. They're really the only business that does this. And they have a massive network of professional artists that they've
Okay.
trained, that have enlisted.
Who did the mural on the library?
That was David Hind, a local artist, and he has a collective as well that assisted him.
Sorry,
David
Has a-
Hind is the artist.
he has a what?
A collective, so it's when a group of artists form.
Collective, okay.
Yes.
Okay. Might it not be an opportunity to invite several folks to submit proposals?
That's what Mural Roots would do. So Mural Roots would tap into their network of artists, but we would also be able to send out that request to the local network as well. But really, with a name like Phil Hartman, we expect that this would have national interest. So they would be acquiring interest from artists all
And
over Canada.
have you looked at the work that these people do and the durability of the work that they do?
Yes, it's highest level of professionalism and the strongest
Okay.
level of murals.
All right, okay. Maybe I'll go again.
Second time? Okay, I'd like to chime in on this as well. I think Phil Hartman was one of my favorite people. You know, we talked about Troy McClure on The Simpsons and stuff, but I mean, I remember him on So I Married an Axe Murderer. One of my favorite lines on that movie was when he's the director at Alcatraz and he says, "Hello, my name is John Johnson, but you can call me Vicky." Like, those are things that stuck with you, only in his voice. He goes to Saturday Night Live and one of his best commercials was Colon Blow. Like it's tested a lot, the time, and it's unfortunate he was taken from us so early. And I think that this is something that we need to do, and I don't know if it's even enough to do. He was taken from us early, and I know, certainly understand that he was probably away from Bradford at a very young age, but so were most talented people away from their cities at a young age, and they've gone somewhere else. So I'll fully support this in hopes that I think we could actually even elaborate as we move forward with something even somewhere else and something bigger. As for tagging and or any vandalism to it, I've had numerous business operations where we've had logos and we put a spray over the top and it always got tagged by the individuals and it washes off with a hose. So if done properly, this should do the same. So I'm not worried about that. I am worried at some point that we might have something go into that little parking lot. And then we kind of lose that. But again, I think we need to go something bigger and better. But certainly, I think this is very well deserved. And at the same point, Councilor Coley, thank you for bringing it forward. So now we'll go to second time speakers. Councilor.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I do want to propose an amendment, and I hope that the mover and seconder would consider this to be friendly. Hope I'm not the only one in the room that's concerned that we might spend a sum of money, engage professionals to honor an individual, only to have someone build a 3-story building next door within the next 36 to 48 months. So I'm going to propose that we amend F to also include considering alternate locations. So an amendment to F to include after Sanderson Center and alternate locations. Seeking a seconder. I have one in Councilor Sullivan. Thank you.
Okay, we'll call the vote. Is this an amendment? It's considered friendly? Mover? So we can call a vote on the amendment. Sorry, Councilor Van Tilburg, did you have something?
This would be on the amendment, right?
Yes.
Okay, speaking to the amendment, just a question for staff. Does this change any of the dynamic timelines, problems going forward, or is this feasible to add this secondary choice or possible secondary choice, first choice as an amendment? Does this disrupt anything?
Through the chair, it's very difficult to identify private or public walls that are city owned. We've run into this roadblock before in the past. And we don't have, it's very difficult to circumvent the public art policy with private walls as well. I can think of one possibility, and I can chat with Councillor Sokoli about that. But beyond that, I really only have one backup plan at this point.
Do you mind just saying what that is? Because I would imagine if you couldn't do it where it was, you'd already know where you could go.
Through the chair, the other space could be the proposed parquet space beside the library that was approved through council report in December and then went through municipal budget process. We have not yet contracted a muralist for that. It is a much smaller wall.
Yes, I know the location.
Yeah.
Maybe I should let you go to let other people know it's a smaller location.
Seeing nothing further, we'll call the vote on the amendment.
The vote on the amendment is not carried. On a recorded vote of 3-7, those councillors voting in favor are Councillor McCreary, Caputo, Sullivan. Those councillors voting against, Councillor Ventilborg, Samuel, Carpenter, Martin, Celeste, Sokoli, and Mayor Davis.
Seeing nothing further, we'll call the vote on the motion.
The vote on the main motion of item 8.3 carries on a recorded vote of 10-0. Those councillors voting in favor, Councillor Ventilborg, Samuel, Carpenter, McCreary, Martin, Celeste, Caputo, Sullivan, Sokoli, and Mayor Davis.
Okay, there are no notices of motion on tonight's agenda. Please note that the notice of motion deadline for council agenda is Thursday, April 25th at 9 a.m. Meeting adjourned.